I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the City of Waynesboro Planning Commission for today, Tuesday, September 19th, 2023. Will, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Has everyone had a chance to look at the agenda?
Yeah.
Would somebody like to make a motion that we approve the agenda
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda from last month's meeting.
for tonight's meeting?
For tonight's meeting.
Can someone second?
I'll second.
Everyone in favor of adopting the agenda?
Aye.
Everyone not? The agenda is adopted. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the meeting held August 22nd, 2023?
Yes.
Someone want to move that we approve them?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the meeting, August 27th, 2023.
Could I have a second?
Second.
Everyone in favor of approving the minutes from the meeting held August 22nd, 2023?
Aye.
Aye.
Everyone not in favor? The minutes are approved. We have a public comment period for items not on the agenda, but I feel like we're getting geared up for the public hearing. Do we not have any public comments not on the agenda? Okay. Oh, no, that's okay.
I didn't receive any public comment.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So tonight we're gonna have a public hearing for zoning map amendment requested by Draft Building Company to amend the proffers for tax map numbers 40-3-115A and 40-3-115C located at 0 Ludowit Boulevard in Waynesboro, Virginia. And Allison will share with us loads of information about that.
Yeah, so this is a rezoning or proffer amendment, in this case for 0 Ludowit Boulevard. This property is located in the western side of the city, and it's the two parcels that sort of straddle Bryant Drive right next to Lowe's, and then also you have that car wash on the other side. So the applicants have requested to amend their proffers that were agreed to as part of a 2001 rezoning of these properties from residential to commercial. The restrictions have made the property difficult to sell or develop, and the applicants feel that the limitations on the property have not reflected how the overall corridor has developed in the last 20 or so years since that rezoning. So the applicant did have a list of 7 proffers, and I'll walk through these one by one in just a few slides here. But these are the list of proffers. But first, just a little bit of background information. This is a map showing the current uses surrounding the property. You've got Lowe's down south, along with DuPont Community Credit Union, the Goodwill and the Walmart commercial areas. You have Creekwood subdivision coming in across the street. You have the car wash, as I mentioned, then also Pratt's Run subdivision to sort of the northwest. So the current zoning of the property is highway business, and this zoning allows for all commercial uses and then also some light industrial ones. It is meant for businesses that rely on close proximity to major transportation routes, and is restricted to areas such as those located on arterials and highways. So 250, 340, Ludowit Boulevard is an arterial, and then I-64 are examples. So here's a quick look at the zoning in this area. By and large, the areas right along or bordering Ludowit are highway business, and then you have a mix of residential zonings. RG5 at Creekwood. Pratt's Run is a mix of RS12, RS7, RG5, which is single-family residential zones, and then some RS12 off to the west. So to put this in some context, this area of the city where the Ludowit corridor is currently was annexed from Augusta County back in 1986. Based on my research, the areas around Rosser Avenue and then West Main Street were most likely brought in as commercial, whereas the areas in between were probably residential. Ludewitt Boulevard was then constructed in the early 90s. And then as the corridor developed, once Ludewitt was in there, the parcels were rezoned individually from residential to commercial as they started to develop. The city's 1998 comprehensive plan called for development in the Ludewitt corridor that of a particular, they're hoping for a particular type. The comp plan called for discouraging strip-style development, respect the environmental constraints, such as Pratt's Run, that goes through that area, and the associated wetland areas through there, and provide the right mix of access to current and then any future residential developments. The comp plan also suggested working towards a design criteria to help guide the development of that corridor. And the applicant's rezoning back in 2001 was likely done with these goals in mind. However, since that time, that design criteria was never created. And with the Lowe's development in 2004 and 5, it seems to have sort of changed the trajectory of that entire corridor. And since that Lowe's development, there has been a good mix of development types throughout, ranging from your strip-style developments to your big box stores at Lowe's, then you have Zeus and restaurants, and so there's a good mix through that corridor now. And current proffers are no longer reasonable expectations for the development of that property, and many of the proffered restrictions can now be regulated by our zoning ordinance, which was updated back in 2011. So with that, I'm going to walk through each of the proffers and say what the applicant's requesting for each of them, and provide a brief explanation. The first proffer was that a maximum of 60,000 square feet of buildings shall be constructed on the 8.604 acre parcel. And the applicant is requesting removal of this proffer. If this amendment is approved, the maximum square footage of the buildings for those parcels will be determined by the use and then any necessary siting requirements. And that would include things like required setbacks, parking areas, landscaping, and that sort of thing. So there will be sort of a restriction on the maximum square footage they could put in just because of those other requirements that they'll also have to meet, stormwater and that sort of thing. The second proffer was that the property will be developed only for professional office and retail uses. No gas stations, fast food, or convenience stores would be allowed. The applicant is requesting this proffer be amended to have that first sentence removed, that it would be only developed for professional office and retail uses, and that second sentence rephrased so that it would state that there will be no gas stations, fast food, convenience stores, or 24/7 retail businesses will be allowed. The third proffer had to do with signs. It called for a single low-rise monument sign that would be provided on Ludewitt Boulevard for the entire complex, and then individual low-rise monument signs allowed for the individual building entrances. There would be no neon signs allowed, and that they would all be of a unified style and subject to architectural review. The applicant is requesting removal of this proffer. Our zoning ordinance has a section dedicated specifically to signs, and it has standards regulating the design, construction, location, illumination, and maintenance of all the signs and structures. And these include restrictions on a sign size, the type, including changeable copy, freestanding, marquee, or portable signs, and then illumination, among other things. Staff believes that the current zoning ordinance would be adequate in regulating any signs for the development on these particular parcels. The fourth proffer was that all buildings have a minimum roof pitch of 712. In that graphic, the one circled in red would be that particular roof pitch. Staff believes the intention of this particular proffer was to avoid buildings with flat roofs. Since the applicant's rezoning and this proffer was put in place, if you go up and down that corridor, you can find a variety of roof pitches. And they range from flat roofs to probably the 712 roof pitch type. A lot of the banks had that's along there. And then also sort of a mix of flat with a sort of facade roof pitch that gives it the appearance of a pitched roof. And then the fifth proffer was that all buildings would be constructed with a brick exterior, and that no building shall have an exposed metal or concrete block exterior. Again, here, if you go along that corridor, there are a variety of exteriors throughout there. You have several buildings with brick exteriors, but then you also have some concrete block. You also have some office buildings that look like they might have hardy plank siding. So there's a variety of sidings throughout that corridor currently. Whoops. And the sixth one was all buildings and site plans be subject to an architectural review. And the applicant is requesting removal of this proffer as well. The city doesn't have any architectural review requirements currently, but any development proposed for these particular parcels would go through the site plan approval process. And then finally, the seventh one, no more than 1/2 of the required and available parking shall be oriented to or visible from Ludewitt Boulevard. The zoning ordinance has a couple different sections dedicated to parking area design, and these include elements like orientation of the parking, landscaping requirements, and that sort of thing, in addition to restricting sizes and that sort of thing. And staff believes that our current parking ordinance would be more than adequate to address any concerns regarding the parking. And then finally, the applicant has offered an additional proffer, and this would be that 15 feet of the existing vegetation shall be maintained along the property line abutting the residentially zoned area. This is primarily its boundary with Pratt's Run. And so they would, instead of doing a clear cut and removing all the vegetation and planting a new buffer, a Class B buffer, which is a 15-foot buffer, would be a requirement. So instead of planting a new buffer with immature vegetation, they're leaving that mature vegetation to provide a more accurate or a more adequate shielding between a potential commercial use and the property. In addition to that, I'll note that there is a 30-foot greenway easement that runs along the back of the property, along the Pratt's Run boundary. And the 15-foot buffer would be placed within that 30-foot easement, and there would still be adequate room for any greenway that would potentially go through there in the future. This buffer should not interfere with that, and our ordinance does allow for trails to share areas with buffers. So that's, and the 30-foot buffer provides adequate space to allow for that. And so then finally, our last 20 years, the Ludewitt corridor really hasn't developed in the way that it was envisioned in the 1998 comprehensive plan. The original proffers made sense at the time, given what they were hoping to do along that corridor, but since then, in the last 20 years, similar conditions weren't put in place for the other properties along that corridor as it developed. And so staff is recommending approval with the proffers as amended, and that, again, is that 15 feet of existing vegetation be maintained along the property line abutting the residentially zoned area, and then also that no gas stations, fast food, convenience stores, or 24/7 retail businesses will be allowed. And that is all I have for you this evening, and happy to answer any questions, and the applicants are here as well.
Anybody have any questions?
Just want to be clear on number 3 when you talk about the signs. So they'll be able to have multiple signs, but they still have to meet the zoning ordinance for signs.
They would have to abide by the zoning ordinance for the signs that they would install.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have one, Allison. Do they have something in mind to go there?
Not
Or
as,
is this to be able to put the property up for sale?
they might be better able to address that question.
Okay.
From what I understand, they have been trying to sell the property, and it's been difficult to sell.
Oh,
This is just a point of order. Do I ask the applicant to approach the bench approach the podium so we can ask him questions now or after the public hearing?
Typically, we open the public hearing, and then the applicant would be the first to speak.
Okay, then let's do that. that way. Okay, so I'd like to open the public hearing for a zoning map amendment request by Draft Building Company to amend the proffers for tax map numbers 40-3-115A and 40-3-115C located at 0 Ludowit Boulevard. And we can ask the applicant to, if you just state your name and address, that'd be great.
Sure. My name is Carrie Wood, and I'm speaking on behalf of Draft Building Company. You need my office address for Draft Building Company, or
Sure.
it's 920 Shenandoah Village Drive, Suite 114, in Waynesboro. And I just had a short prepared statement I was going to read, if that's okay, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions. The proffers that are being discussed tonight that Allison has just enumerated were made in 2001 as suggested by city officials. The proffers reflected what was in the comprehensive plan at the time for Ludwig corridor. There was very little development on the road then, with the exception of a strip mall at 109 Ludwig, which fronts Main Street and had a Harris Teeter as an anchor tenant. Subsequent development on Ludwig has included Walmart in 2003, Lowe's in 2004. Since then, there's been the construction of Zeus Movie Theater, Tractor Supply Company, Napa Auto. In addition, there are strip malls and car washes built near the subject property. At the time the proffers were made in 2001, it was the intent of Draft Building Company to develop the property. However, since then, between the economic turndown in 2008 and the death of the owner of Draft Building, his family members as heirs and current owners are no longer in the building business and wish to sell the property. The property has been for sale. Realtors have advised Draft Building the existing proffers are too stringent for any potential purchasers and more restrictive than land use allowed on adjoining lots and along Ludwig. Larry Wood, who is currently a minority shareholder of Draft Building Company, was responsible for the planning and building of most of the Pratt's Run subdivision, which you saw in one of the slides, which is located directly behind the lots at issue. He takes pride in his involvement in that neighborhood and intends to maintain the property values and the aesthetics for the homeowners in Pratt's Run. But to that end, we request that proposed proffers of maintaining a 15-foot buffer of existing vegetation incorporated within the greenway easement and prohibiting the construction of gas stations, fast food, convenience stores, or 24/7 retail businesses be approved. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I don't think I have any questions.
So it sounds like they want to get out of the development business altogether.
Yes, sir. The property has been listed for sale, and unfortunately, potential purchasers have seen the proffers in place and have passed.
Thank you very much.
Do I need to answer questions from?
No, that's,
Nope, you're good.
you're good.
Thank you.
And we do have one person signed up to speak.
Okay.
Doug Noland.
If you'd give your name and address, please.
Certainly, Madam Chair, members of the commission, I'm Doug Noland. I live at 105 Jasper Lane in Waynesboro in Pratt's Run. I'm the president of the Pratt's Run Owners Association, which now, well, as of the end of this month, will have 75 units. Those are the duplexes and triplexes. In addition, there are 15 single-family homes in Pratt's Run that are not part of our association, but are a section of Pratt's Run. All of the access to Pratt's Run is through Bryant Drive. So anything that goes on through there, I would ask that the staff and city be very cognizant of what happens, because that's our way in and out. At some point, that may be in the future, have some development coming through Augusta County, but that's going over other properties, and who knows what happens in the future. As far as the development itself, my wife and I feel that we're blessed to be able to live in that Pratt's Run subdivision. We appreciate that and appreciate what Mr. Wood has built there. However, as the commission knows, when zoning matters come to before you, those attached to the land and not particularly with the owners. So even though owners may have the best of intentions and hope that good things will happen in the future, things may change, and particularly about the property being zoned for a highway business. The uses are a concern to us. I'm grateful for the gas station, fast food, and convenience store, grateful for adding the 24/7, that nothing is added to that. I could think of some other things that really would not be appropriate with our group. For example, if there are outdoor entertainment, like at Plaza Antigua, I could see Little Walter and the Convictions playing. I might enjoy sitting on my porch listening to them, but I suspect my neighbors would not. And we would hear them, I'm sure, very well. I would suggest to the commission that the rezoning and the proffers that were done included not only what you're looking at for the commercial side, but there's some aspects that had to do with transitioning into a residential area. You had the greenway requirement, some of the requirements about what the buildings look like. All of the buildings in Pratt's Run have brick facades, at least on the front. So that brick is very consistent with what happened with our development. So we're not, most of the things that they're asking about really are not troublesome to us, but we do ask the commission and the city to be very aware and look at what's happening with transitioning into another area. I am disappointed that the staff report to you, which did acknowledge that with the time that this was originally rezoned, at the same time it was rezoned for the residential purposes in Pratt's Run. So that suggests that perhaps there was some more interlocking with what happened in that zoning at that time. And some, assuming that the proffers are accepted, and very well may be, we'll run over into a staff input or staff review of things. I may be stepping out of bounds by making this comment, but I'm going to make it anyway. When it comes time for the site plan review, that is not a period where there is any public input. And with Bryant being our only means of access, we're particularly concerned and particularly sensitive to that. That issue is really highlighted to us if you've had the opportunity to pull in and out of that Lowe's parking lot. At least for us sometimes, it's like you're playing chicken as you're approaching the stoplight to get in and out. That way that is planned to come out, I would suggest leaves a lot to be desired, and I would hope that if you're planning this site plan, distances and the like for this one, that staff is very cognizant of what happens downstream that come to us about getting in and out. As to the greenway, I raised that issue because I'm not sure what it means and what are the obligations about maintaining anything in there. 30 or 15 foot, I'm certainly not an expert to know what's the proper buffer zone for something to exist. I would just mainly be concerned that the rules about the greenway and the buffer be clear both to the applicant and to the owners, so we all know what to expect, what to happen if things are to be, as plants will die out, to be replaced if need be, and that sort of thing. Just so want to be clear about what are the mutual obligations about the greenway. I thank you for your attention to our comments this evening and for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments by mail or anything like that?
No, and there's no one else signed up to speak, but I don't know if everyone knew that the sign up was available, so.
Okay, so if anyone else wants to speak, I'm going to go crazy and let you approach the podium. I think we're good, and I think we can close the public hearing. Discussion.
This isn't a by right piece of property, is it, Allison and Leslie?
So the property, so the property is currently zoned highway business,
Oh.
but the 7 proffers that were reviewed exist on the property. So
Okay.
it could develop today as long as it was a professional office or retail use that was under the square foot maximum that had the pitched roof and the brick facade. Yes, it could develop today under those restrictions. So it is zoned highway business, but with those restrictions. And then the request would be to eliminate the majority of those restrictions and have our zoning ordinance govern the sign development, the parking development, full site plan, but then kind of adding, restricting the uses still with the no gas stations, fast food, convenience stores, or 24/7 retail businesses. And then rather than, completely clearing the property of all vegetation and planting those new, very kind of short trees that take a long time to establish themselves, they proffered that 15 feet of the existing vegetation would be maintained, to create that transition from a business use to a residential use in a way that is, more robust.
Is there a 15-foot buffer on the residential side as well?
No, so the ordinance requirement is just a 15-foot buffer, so if this proffer wasn't submitted, and they just wanted to focus on the uses, then they could clear the property completely, but then would have to leave 15 feet on their side, and plant, the Class B buffer, which is a certain set of trees and shrubs.
But there's no buffer on the next parcel between
No,
this parcel and the residential?
no, I mean, they would have their normal setback, but there is no buffer per se.
Ask a question of the applicant?
Sure.
At this point. I agree with what you're asking here on removing these proffers, and is the biggest issue you've had in selling the property has been biggest issue in selling the property has been the, number 2 there, where it's restricted, will be developed only for professional office and retail uses?
I believe there have been offers made by other types of businesses, but since the proffers are in place, it has not been, we can't sell it for that reason, or draft cannot sell it for that reason.
Okay. Due to the other proffers, or is it just the limitation as far as professional office and retail?
I'm not sure, I haven't spoken to the Realtor, but I believe there was one offer by another car wash, which would not fit into that.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
We did reject an offer with somebody, it wouldn't have been allowed, but mini storage, and I told them we weren't going to do that,
Okay.
no matter what.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with the 24/7, I guess it depends on how it's worded. That specifically says a 24/7 retail business. We would have to see how that would be interpreted with a car wash. Because, I believe the majority of those are open, for anyone to access at any time. So, but I agree that could probably be clarified more if that's something that was specifically trying to be precluded. But it sounds like the applicant, would like that flexibility. But I just point that out as kind of a nuance between the 24/7 being related to retail businesses. And I think it could be interpreted either way.
Is a car wash not a retail business?
Yeah, I mean, I think we would likely interpret it as a 24/7 retail business. But I just point out that there could be some nuances there.
Gosh, there's nuance in everything when it comes to zoning.
Only has to close for an hour to not be 24/7.
Yeah, who makes that determination on what's considered a 24/7 retail business?
So I think at that point, it would be up to Laura Martin, our zoning administrator, to make a determination. Certainly there is an avenue for individuals to kind of apply in opposition to her decision through the Board of Zoning Appeals. And proffers are often a tricky thing because it kind of comes back to, they're submitted by the applicant. they're accepted by the city, and often there's back and forth on what that language looks like. And then, some of it is probably looking back on the minutes and the intention at the time. But I just point out that if it's something that you want or would recommend being identified more clearly, then it doesn't hurt to do that.
So we could say no car washes.
Sure. You could make
could
that
be
recommendation.
specifically.
Yes.
Could we also say no vapes, no vape stores? I know we're going to talk about it later.
It's just such a slippery slope when you start getting so specific. I
Yeah.
just don't know what the good answer is.
So when staff looked at the kind of uses, I guess the thought process was trying to limit the 24/7 type business.
Right.
But yes, there are other uses that are allowed in highway business that are either allowed by right or allowed through a conditional use permit, which again would be another level of review and an approval by the city, that aren't specifically precluded with what they've submitted.
Would the sort of development that it sounds like the commenter was concerned about, specifically would be a restaurant? And
So, right.
To his point on Little Walter, the conditions is well taken. I certainly understand the noise part of it being a concern with that proximity to residential. Is that something that could be addressed on the zoning side? Is that something we would have to put more specifically in the?
So I do believe that with the specific proffers that stand today, restaurants would not be permitted. With these proffers, a restaurant would be permitted. And so at that point, any kind of outdoor music associated with the restaurant, I think would end up falling back on our noise ordinance, which also is kind of, which can change from time to time. So again, if that is something that you would want precluded as a use to have outdoor music, then yes, that should be something that, if that's a concern, then these proffers are not ameliorating your concerns.
But right up the road, you got Zeus and Bottles that are border right up against the other development right there, so, I mean,
Yeah, I'm just pointing out what,
Yeah.
that yes, a restaurant would be permitted if the amendments were made, and we don't not allow outdoor music at restaurants. It would just kind of be subject to other city requirements.
Yeah.
Right. We all live in a city and we're all subject to the same noise
Yep.
requirements. So to isolate one neighborhood seems
Yeah.
extremely elitist.
I
Yeah.
agree. I just have, and I was sort of thinking about it in the context of the equity with the other developments, how to bring it into line for allowing the same developments in the same.
Right, well, I think our noise ordinance is uniform throughout the city,
Yeah.
correct?
And that was just the
Yeah,
question I asked.
yeah, that's the, I don't know. Well, any other thoughts?
I mean, when you look up and down that corridor, I wasn't on the planning commission in 2015 and definitely not on it in 2001. And I don't think nobody sitting in here in this room was involved in any of that. And it's a fair statement to say that it has not developed the way that whoever originally thought. Because we do have a variety of businesses down through there. And I think our zoning ordinances and everything else would take care of any concerns that the Pratt's Run Neighborhood Association or Homeowners Association, I'm not sure which way it's labeled, would take care of.
I just had a question or comment about the traffic. Wouldn't anything that were put in there be subject to same old VDOT traffic requirements that everyone else is?
So Lou DeWitt is a kind of limited access roadway, so it would go through reviews there.
Right.
And entrances on Bryant Drive would essentially be evaluated, it would be a by right development. But, certain turn lane warrant analysis or things that would need to happen.
Those would all be
would still
relative to the
be-
development of the specific
Would still be
development of the
reviewed,
property.
yes.
So it wouldn't be a free-for-all with as many cars could go in there if they wanted, and then the people could never get out of their neighborhood.
I mean, essentially, it is a by right development. So, so professional offices are permitted. Some doctors' offices are a much higher generator of traffic than others. So we wouldn't have, when I say we, the city wouldn't have complete control on that, on
Right.
what uses locate there.
Right.
But there would still be some evaluation of traffic impacts and
Right.
entrance considerations and adjacent property connections and, those kind of things through the site plan process, yes.
And I feel like since the years since Lowe's has went in there, the requirements for traffic has changed. I don't even know if that entrance from Lowe's onto Bryant Drive would even be applicable under today's requirements. But when it was put in per those requirements at the time.
So just this is a question from me to you guys. When I state what we're going to vote on, is it a rezoning or is it a change of proffers or is it both?
It's a proffer amendment, and typically those are also referred to as rezoning.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I say it correctly.
The proffers are part of the zoning.
Part of the
become
actual
part of the
zoning.
zoning ordinance and run with the land.
Okay.
So it's often used interchangeably, a proffer amendment or a rezoning.
Okay. Okay, so are we ready to vote? Does someone want to make a motion? I can let you guys make the motion.
I can make a motion, Madam Chair. I'll make the motion to approve the zoning map amendments requested by Draft Building Company to amend the proffers for tax map number 40-3-115A and 40-3-115C located at 0 Lou DeWitt Boulevard, Waynesboro, Virginia.
As presented.
As presented.
Okay, everyone in favor?
Aye.
Everyone not in favor? Motion carries. We are on to number 6, second consideration of a conditional use permit request by Waynesboro Area Refuge Ministry, Warm, to modify its existing conditional use permit number 13091 and 18-312, allowing temporary supportive housing operations in the RG5 General Residential District at 1035 Fairfax Avenue, tax map number 26-19A, Waynesboro, Virginia.
Yes, so at last month's meeting, presented on the conditional use permit amendment for Warm, and this request was tabled. And so I'll briefly go over what they're requesting tonight, and then if you have any other questions for me, I'll be happy to try and answer them. Brian Edwards, who is the interim executive director of Warm, is also here to answer the questions that came up at last month's meeting. But briefly, the Waynesboro Area Refuge Ministry is requesting amendment to their current CUP for conditions 1B and C. These amendments would increase the maximum number of persons that are permitted in the building, and that would be from 30 to 35, which would allow Warm to serve one additional family, and then also reduce the number of required staff from 3 to 1. And I wanted to go ahead and pull up the slide that sort of outlines the requested changes and their place within the conditions, and then open it up to questions.
Any questions from commissioners?
I think the only question we had was the one Kenny had last time was about the reduction in staff from 3 to
Right.
1 and the increase in number of individuals or families present in the facility.
Yes, and so I think Brian would be able to address those questions. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Board Commissioners. So that requirement, we are looking, when the original CUP was passed back in 2013, this was something very new to us, so we weren't really sure what kind of staffing we were going to need. The three staff members down to one full-time, that minimum is only for the overnight hours. And we have experienced that, during the overnight hours, only one staff member is really necessarily needs to be there because that person is awake. They are, it is up to, there are curfews for mothers and their children to be in bed. Of course, we have certain exceptions if a mother is coming back from work. They do not have a key or the combination because we don't want that shared. So that staff member has to be able to open that door for them. Other than that, they're there for emergency purposes. Again, we do have we have supervisory staff that is available, myself included, 24/7 if something comes up for that house monitor that they cannot manage. And the 30 to 35, presently now, we have just 13 families, 13 children, parents and children there. We never really get above 20. It's the volunteers and the other staff members, board members like myself who come in, and just people come in. We have, you can imagine, it's an older building. There are a lot of repairs, so that also covers the contractors coming in. So we just want it to be in compliance when we're kind of like, well, we have a lot of folks in here now. And we do have a staff member. We are kind of maintaining that 2 to 3 number of staff during the day when the house is at its most active.
And this would allow you to, from what we heard last time, would allow you to serve one more family, correct?
Yes, we were able, our acquisition of the Arc of Augusta building, which is really adjacent to the property, we were able to move our executive offices from the house over to there, and it's just a walk across the parking lot. Mm-hmm. So that's an additional staff member who's present. So we have, we've been working to change that former executive office into another bedroom.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Anyone else have any questions?
So the increase in persons or individuals on the premises isn't people staying there. It's to accommodate the influx and outflux of staff, maintenance, so forth and so on.
One additional family, you're exactly correct, Mr. Goodman. One additional family would probably, the room is big enough because it has, we could have, and it's just mothers and their children. There are no males permitted inside the house, but it would be, maybe a mother and up to 3 to 4 children.
The report refers to a licensure of the facility. Who or what is that? I'm not familiar with that.
I'm not familiar with that myself.
Oh, okay.
No, you're good. We're getting out the staff report. What section is that?
Well, now I need to find it.
I do believe there were some questions last time about whether this specific use was licensed through some other, like a group home and I don't believe that is the case. They don't have any kind of state licensing requirements.
I think we didn't know, and when we were talking about the number of staff relative to the number of persons, we didn't know if there were some external criteria you had to meet, like a child care center or something would.
No.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
because we're residential, and basically the mothers are caring for their own children.
Right. It's totally not, I mean, I don't know how you would license it, but there's no licensing agency for it.
That's correct.
That was kind of one of our questions, but I think you've sort of cleared up what the issue is.
How about as far as when you're saying down to one staff member is going to be on the overnight hours?
Only on the overnight hours, and weekends, because again, we don't have a whole lot of activity going on. A lot of the mothers are working and they take their children to other places. Most of our, I would say, probably 4 out of the 5 mothers have full-time employment. So we are not responsible for their children, so they would take their children to childcare during the day and then pick up their children at night and come back. So during the day, really, or on the weekends during the day, the house is very quiet. Sometimes it's mostly in the evenings when we have everyone coming back in. This also helps us adapt to the current job market where it's very hard to find that number of people.
True.
What is your backup if that one person is sick or?
We will not operate. We have an on-call person or the supervisory person come in. We cannot operate without a staff member on site.
Okay.
Well, I think you do a great job, and I wish we had 50 more warm houses to give people places to stay.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for your information. It's been quite helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more conversation? Somebody want to make us motion?
I'll make a motion, let me take my glasses off. I'll make a motion to approve the conditional use permit request by Waynesboro Area Refuge Ministry Incorporated, Warm, to modify its existing conditional use permit number 13-091 and number 18-012, allowing temporary supportive housing operations in the RG5 General Residential District at 1035 Fairfax Avenue, tax map number 26-1-9A, Waynesboro, Virginia.
Second? Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Everyone opposed? Motion carries. And now we move on to number 7, one of our most favorite topics to discuss.
Okay, so tonight I do have a draft, a first draft of a potential text amendment for a vapor smoke shop. It's in 2 parts. The first part I have is the definition. I borrowed very heavily from the definition that the city of Williamsburg used for their text amendment for these stores. It includes a very detailed list of products that includes tobacco and vape products, but then also some additional products like CBD. It also includes some exemption language for stores that sell these products, but also sell other things as their primary purpose, grocery stores and that kind of thing. And so this is the definition. Vapor smoke shop is a retail establishment that sells cigars, tobacco, and or tobacco products such as, but not limited to, cigars, pipe tobacco, roll your own supplies, herbal and wax vaporizers, glassware, hookah and water pipes, and or cannabis and or hemp products such as, but not limited to, CBD and or e-cigarettes and associated equipment such as, but not limited to, vape batteries, coils, and e-liquids. Drugstores, retail food stores, grocery stores, and convenience stores, the primary purpose of which is to sell goods and services other than those listed above, shall not be considered vape or smoke shops, even if the above referenced goods are offered for sale. And that goes into the second part of the ordinance, which is use standards. And this section would include a purpose statement, very brief purpose statement, what constitutes the establishment of a vapor smoke shop, and then also that location restriction for the city public schools. So the purpose, the standards of this section are intended to address potentially negative secondary effects of vape or smoke shops on the community. Establishment, the following activities shall constitute the establishment of a vape or smoke shop as referred to herein. The initial opening of a vape or smoke shop, including without limitation the conversion of an existing business into a vape or smoke shop, or the relocation of an existing vape or smoke shop. And then finally, the location. No vape or smoke shop may be established within 500 feet of a public elementary, middle, or high school. All distances specified in this section shall be measured in a straight line from the property line of a vape or smoke shop to the nearest principal structure. And so with that, here is the map that shows what that 500-foot buffer would look like around the schools. You really cannot see the colors very well on this, but the two schools that would encompass commercial areas, or excuse me, whoops, wrong button. 3 schools actually, but it's the high school, which has the commercial areas along West Main, and then goes sort of the, the west side of Broad Street. So all that area would be commercial areas. Winona Elementary, you have the commercial areas that kind of wrap around right here on Broad and Main. And then finally, William Perry with the Food Lion complex right here with the DMV and the mini storage. So that would be a commercial area right here. The other 2 schools, or 3 schools, the middle school and the other 2 elementary schools don't actually encompass any commercial areas at the moment. And so with that, just want to open it up to discussion, your thoughts. Right now, we have it limited to public schools. To know what your thoughts were about private schools, preschools, pre-K. And then any thoughts about your about the distance restriction, and then anything else. Just kind of wanted to open it up to what you thought.
Can you go back to that map real quick, Allison?
Sure.
Where is Wayne Hills, the pre-K at on that map?
That would be, let's see,
Trying to get my bearings.
Right there.
I think it's right around here.
Okay.
And so, yeah, keep in mind that some of those types of uses could be permitted in residential zoned areas through conditional use permits or, I guess, church establishment.
Can we see the list, the proposed text amendment, the list and again?
That's it in its entirety.
Well, I think it's awesome. And if it keeps, it restricts very little geographic area, but if it keeps 2 kids from walking across the street and getting killed sucking on a vape, I think we've done something good. Or if it in any way helps vaping not be the #1 administrative issue at our local high school, so our kids, God forbid, could actually get an education, I think we've done our job.
Just out of curiosity, Allison, if that 500 feet was to expand to 1,000, would that encompass the circus tent on Broad Street?
Circus tent on Broad Street.
The other vape shop that's lit up like a strip in Las Vegas.
It's incorporated now.
I was going to say, this
I think
this
it's
one
in,
right
it's very,
here. That's,
I think that one would be incorporated in the 500.
and now that would be allowed to stay till it
Yeah,
wasn't,
it'd
it
be
didn't exist.
grandfathered, but-
Yeah, sure. If it was to relocate or, yes, it would not have to, close down if the ordinance were to go into effect. It would just be limiting the establishment of new, or the conversion of other existing businesses that weren't vape or smoke shops to vape or smoke shops.
So if we pass this and I open a store to sell herbal remedies next door to the high school and also sell this stuff, I'm fine because the primary purpose is to sell something else?
I think those things get back to the intent. I think the specific list of drugstores, retail food stores, grocery stores, and convenience stores, the primary purpose of which is to sell, we would definitely be looking about a percentage and, that it would be clearly incidental to. Certainly there could be instances where someone might open, a shop that has both, just the way they do in grocery stores, but it wouldn't be the primary purpose. But that would be at the discretion of, kind of like all things, the zoning administrator and staff to evaluate, and then certainly if it had to be litigated. But yes, there could be, the ordinance is what we would rely on to give us that ability to say, is it a drugstore, retail food store, grocery store, or convenience store that has a primary purpose of other items? Could be slippery.
Just to put a more cynical point on it, and I'm not questioning the intent at all, I'm just sort of nitpicking the language. I could open up a porn shop across the street from the high school.
We do have an
that
adult,
sells vapes.
yeah, so we do have a separate adult business ordinance, so that is probably not the best example.
Well, okay, but
We restrict that also.
I'm trying to put the most extreme point on it.
Yes. You could open other, there could be, an ABC store there
Sure,
that
yeah.
sells vape.
Yeah,
And so
I
that would be a convenience store, that's primary purpose is not that. So yes, something like that would be permitted.
I just want to make sure I fully understand.
Yes, makes sense.
Could we define the primary purpose, and maybe Will can answer this, if they're a drugstore, retail, food store, grocery store, convenience store, could we put in there that these products can only constitute 15-20% of their overall business? Because then it removes the ambiguity.
Yes, you could do that. I think my recommendation would then be staff would need to do, more research to kind of figure out, what that percentage is, what makes sense, and, something like a Walmart as compared to a smaller convenience store. So we would just, not that it couldn't be done, I just think we wouldn't want to just say something, but kind of review that. But yeah, you could add something like that to a definition. It would be harder on the enforcement end in terms of getting a site plan. We don't always identify all that type of stuff. So I can see it being a little bit of an enforcement challenge. But it is something that, could be added to your definition.
Yeah, because that would remove the ambiguity that Will was hinting at, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I just, if I set out to, I'm trying to think about what we're trying to accomplish here, and I see some potential loopholes, but maybe not potential loopholes, some ways that you could easily manipulate your storefront. If this is what you're after, is to sell vapes or smoke products, and again, I also have some concerns. I mean, there are cigar shops and tobacco shops that are good citizens and are good businesses.
I'm not saying they're not good citizens or not good businesses. What I'm saying is their proximity to the high school needs to be measured, because we have buildings full of young boys and girls whose frontal lobes are not fully developed and are not able to make clear, concise decisions, whether it's for a good citizen or not good citizen. This is no measure of someone's citizenship in my mind.
Sure, understood, but
I mean, why have zoning at all? I go back to this, why have zoning at all if we're not going to use it to make our city a better, safer place? Let's put the vape shop next to your house then.
well, you can't because it's zoned residential, because the point of zoning is to ensure consistent uses in areas that they're planned for.
So let's not plan to have vape shops by schools.
I'm not advocating, certainly not advocating for vape shops next to schools.
I don't think anyone could have anticipated the epidemic we're facing right now. I don't think anyone could have anticipated that.
Understood, and working in the criminal justice system, I see it all the time. And I see the issues with this all the time, related to this in terms of student discipline, in terms of,
Student death.
I deal with criminal defendants on a regular basis who use kratom, who use CBD, who use all sorts of mind-altering substances, including marijuana, that may or may not be legal. My question or my concern here is this the role of a planning commission, or is this something, is the planning commission the best avenue? We should have robust criminal enforcement in this area, that should support an effort in the schools. And this is not necessarily the hill that I'm gonna die on, but those are my questions. Is this the best solution? Just because we can, doesn't mean we should. Is this, if there are better solutions? Those are my questions. And if we are gonna do it, I wanna make sure that that it has teeth.
Yeah.
And that it's not easily manipulated and easily avoided.
Well, I think we have a brilliant zoning staff who would do their best
Yeah.
to keep the code from being manipulated. And I agree with you that there are enforcement issues and legal issues, but I think we also all have to work together to support each other.
Allison and Leslie, is there how long has this zoning ordinance in Williamsburg been in effect?
Remember when?
Not long. I think it's only been.
Yeah, I think when we were doing research, some hadn't even been approved yet, and we're just in the drafting stages. So I think it's new for the majority of places that have, it's a limited number that have done it in Virginia.
Yeah, because Chesterfield was the other one that I read that was really good, and from what I read, their ordinance had been through the court system down there and prevailed.
Well, and it was, at the end of the day, it worked.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask a question. I'm coming in on the tail end of this because I didn't hear earlier presentations. Is the intent of this to try to set up a buffer zone between the vape shops and the schools?
So we had, some kind of overall discussions about, through zoning, you can do different things. You could regulate signage, but not just for a specific use. So you're regulating, kind of signage in general, or, what is it that you're getting at? And based on some of the concerns and discussion that the commission had, we decided to, focus on, okay, let's define what we're talking about, and then let's create a buffer from schools. And the 500-foot was something we saw in other localities, and was kind of the general discussion that the commission had. So just so we're clear, we've discussed this several times. The planning commission did vote for staff to draft something.
Yep.
So this is our draft. And so we can go back to the drawing board and we can continue to draft. So that's an option. If there are things that you think you would like to see amended, that's something we would want to know. If you want to think on it and have us bring it up again at the next meeting, that's a possibility. If everybody loves the ordinance as drafted and says, we would like you to go ahead and take it to a public hearing, it would come back to you again, but it would be, it would be the public process, and then you would make the recommendation to council. So I guess those are kind of three things. Or I guess there's a fourth also, we appreciate the draft, but, as a full commission at this point, or a majority of the commission, we don't support it. So back to the drawing board. We want to advertise it for a public hearing, or we want to think on it a little bit more, or we, thank you for bringing us the draft, we're no longer interested. So those kind of four options are things that staff are looking for.
Has any of the other ordinances that y'all have looked at given a reason why they didn't include pre-K and private schools?
I think some of it comes down to enforcement. I know that when we were working on the draft, we thought about putting like educational institution, and then you get back to, well, how do you define that? And if it's people taking night classes, or if they hold. So from an enforcement and ease of enforcement standpoint, and from a public entity standpoint, that seemed to make the most sense to us. I don't know if Alisand has any more specific information from her research regarding
Well, I think
what was chosen.
the public and private schools, there's some question to their longstandingness too. I could open a private school tomorrow and close it in 6 months. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
And
Sure, there would be, there's more flexibility there,
right.
and it would be, more difficult for
right.
enforcement.
It seems to me public schools would be
Easier.
sort of standard
Yeah.
fare, I think.
I would like to see Wayne Hills Pre-K included in that.
So, is it appropriate to do a roll call and have them say, I want choice number 1, number 2, number 3, or number 4?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would, yeah, be up
Okay.
to your discretion to see.
Can I ask one other question? What about, was it mentioned earlier about expanding it from 500 feet to 1,000 feet? Is that still an option? I mean,
Yeah, so that would be if you say, you know, I like that we're doing something, I like the general
Yeah.
definition. I would actually like to see it go a little bit farther and be 1,000 feet, then that would be us staff kind of taking it back to continue drafting to bring it back to you. And so if a majority wanted the 1,000, then we could certainly draft that. I think there has been such a mix on the commission that staff's just not aware of where the majority lies. And so I think that would be very helpful to know now that you've seen this draft.
Can you go back to the map real quick, Alice Ann? Y'all have to pardon me, I can't see the detail from way back there. If I'm right, the circus tent is right along in there somewhere, ain't it?
No, I think it's 1 block closer to the school. It's already circled in.
Yeah.
The line that follows.
Yeah.
Is that roadway, yeah,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, Broad Street, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I was looking at the other artery right there.
Okay, so
Yep.
I'm not sure how to do this to get the best information. Let me think for a minute.
And
Can I make a suggestion, Madam Chair?
Sure, I'm always open to suggestions.
Well, why don't we have a motion to approve, to recommend it as drafted? And if that fails, we can have a motion to continue to talk about it.
Okay. Does someone want, that sounds great, thank you very much. I was like getting a little too complicated in my head.
I can make, I'll make a motion to approve the, drafted, the draft zoning text amendment for the vape, and tobacco shops has currently written and stated.
so your motion would essentially be that you would direct staff to schedule public hearings based on this ordinance?
If it passes, yes.
Yes, okay.
Okay, do I have a second on that? Well, if we have no second, I guess it kind of drops dead. So on to the next thing.
In order for, can I ask this, in order for staff, since we've made a motion, we've got no second, the motion's dead in the water, can we do a roll call vote that would enable the staff to further develop this based on
Yes.
what each member's hangup is,
Yeah, so I mean, I guess,
for lack of a better term?
so I guess the next motion could be that you direct staff to go back to the drawing board, and there would be, you know, specific items that you would want amended.
Yeah.
And then another motion would essentially be, you know, not to proceed with the ordinance.
if we don't proceed with the ordinance, then anything goes, right? It's pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah, I mean, so it would be the way things are allowed now. I guess, you know, it could always be brought up again. So when the vote is to not proceed, I guess it's essentially just saying that the commission doesn't want to schedule public hearings related to this type of regulation, and that things would remain the same as they are in our zoning ordinance currently, where we do not regulate vape or smoke shops any differently than any other business. They're permitted as any other business in our current ordinance. And so if the commission votes to not have staff schedule public hearings or further draft this ordinance, then it would essentially be a vote to have the zoning ordinance remain the same and have those uses be governed as other business uses in the city.
Well, personally, I haven't looked at this in a lot of detail, but my one hangup is the 500 feet. I'd like to see 1,000 feet. I think the more distance you have, the better.
So,
And, I'm sorry.
oh, no, that's okay. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, I was just going to add, like, I'm on the William Perry end of the city, and I think if we go to 1,000 feet, that would knock out any vape shop being by Food Line in that shopping center, I'm thinking.
Well, I think it's already knocked out because the shopping center, the boundaries are within that
Part
500
of it
feet,
is.
correct?
Part of it is,
Yeah.
but not the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it includes the entirety of it, but.
It doesn't, on the map, it doesn't include the entirety of it.
Nearest principal structure,
Yeah.
and that's talking about the principal, I think, talking about the principal structure of the
Yeah,
The whole complex,
business.
the whole complex or the business?
Yeah. To me, it would be the corner,
yeah, so it looks like from the map, the 500 would get the Food Lion, that principal structure, but wouldn't go as far as the DMV.
well,
So it would get that whole shopping center then, you're saying? Looking at your map here, it looked like the line was going straight down the middle of the building.
Is this the shopping center he's talking about?
Yeah, if the line touches the building.
Yeah, so I mean, the
there's-
line, the 500-foot
Okay.
line is splitting
Okay.
that building right
Okay.
now.
Okay.
Okay. So, I hate to do this, but I feel like we're getting close to something that might work for everybody. Can we talk about it again next time? I mean, is that an okay thing? Just because you're relatively new, do you feel like you need more time?
Well, I'd like to, I'm all for restricting this as much as we can, to be honest
Okay,
with you.
okay.
So, like I said, I haven't had a chance to look at the other details. I would like to see a 1,000-foot buffer.
We do have, and this was our mistake to not send you this, but we do have a more updated memo on vape shops that we did provide to the full commission months ago that did include some mapping of 500 feet, 1,000 feet, all the ordinances. So, if the commission would be willing, I don't think it would be, bad to extend that and allow you the ability to
Right,
review
so
all of that information.
We can have fully informed commissioners. I think that if we tabled it until next weekend, you could be more well-informed.
Okay.
And then,
All right, I
and then we
appreciate
could,
that.
If we're gonna do this, the only observation I have is, I'm looking at the definitional section, synthetic cannabis products and kratom need to be included.
oh, perfect. Thank you so much.
Cannabis is fine, there are all sorts of things that are cannabis, that are not cannabis. Delta 8, Delta 12 spring to mind. Kratom is a mild synthetic narcotic that you can buy at a gas station.
Mhm.
There are all sorts of other dangerous things that are very similar to the items that this ordinance is designed to protect against that ought to be included.
Well, if you can think of any, send them to them so they can include them.
If that's all right.
yep.
I think it is our aim.
Kratom, Delta.
And again, let me be clear, and I want to make sure that if we do this, it works. I have larger concerns. If we want to ban them in the city outright, that'd suit me just fine too, me
Right.
personally. I have larger concerns about what the role of the planning commission really is relative to enforcement with this, relative to addressing this particular issue, and whether or not we're trying to use a really, really, really square peg in a really, really round hole here. But just my perspective.
I appreciate that. I just am trying to model it after what other municipalities have done that have worked. So can someone want to make a motion to table it till?
I'll make the motion to table this until next month's meeting to allow staff time to update our newest commissioner and,
Update the list of bad stuff.
and update the list per Will's recommendations.
Second.
Everyone in favor of tabling it?
Aye.
Everyone not? Oops, I hit the hammer too soon. Okay, all right. So we can table it to next weekend. Okay, review of minor subdivision and final subdivision plats approved since the August 22, 2023 meeting.
I actually don't have any of those for you this evening.
Okay.
All right.
Any other matters from staff, correspondence?
No, I think you all have met the newest member, Mr. Klon, but
Yes.
we welcome him to the Planning Commission.
Thank
So I
you
just
so
wanted
much.
to mention that.
Yep. Has Hashim's position been posted yet, Leslie?
Yes, so there is an available open
Okay.
position that has been posted.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And just in case, can you remind me of what a meeting is? Like a meeting amongst stuff? Is it 2 or 3 people? Qualifies as a meeting? Like if we were
I've
gonna
always,
talk
I
about
think
this.
it's 3 people.
It's 3 people, and that includes emails, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's a meeting of the public body that needs to be noticed.
Okay, so if we are going to email each other, it either has to be individual or not have it at all.
Yes.
I just wanted to be clear, because sometimes I have questions of people, and I just want to make sure I'm not doing anything.
Yes, so yes, that's probably good to go over, but yes, anytime there's 3 or more together, either in person, in any kind of conference call situation or over
Right.
email, then it's, an assembly of the public body that is supposed to be noticed.
Okay.
Let me ask this real quick. Would it be prudent for us, Shannon, to have a work session to develop this?
I feel like, I
Or-
guess we can have one if we want to, but
Or is it, that way you could do it in a work session, just like the city council does behind closed
No,
doors?
so I will point out that, so,
Okay.
yeah, that, it wouldn't be, any work session that we had on this would
Oh.
still be noticed. I mean,
Okay.
it would be listed on the agenda and done at a public meeting.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Because it doesn't fall under any of the, like, closed session
Right.
exemptions
Okay.
that council has. Yeah.
Okay.
okay, well then, hopefully you can get caught up and we'll talk about it some more and.
Yes, and we'll just set up a meeting, Mr. Klon, if you're interested, and we'll also provide you that memo and packet of information that was provided to the full commission months ago related to the topic. Yes. And my apologies for not thinking to include that part.
In the era of being totally transparent, do y'all want to send that email back out to everybody?
Sure, we could, just to make sure everybody has it up front, fresh in their mind,
And-
yes.
That way, everything's transparent. You can't say, well, you send it to one, why didn't you send it to all?
Sure, I'd be happy to include it again on everybody's
Yeah.
email.
All right, so we want to move that we close the meeting?
I'll make a motion that we close tonight's meeting.
Second?
Second.
Everyone in favor of closing it?
Aye.
Everyone wants to stay here and party?